Hyperacusis produces some problems for any family or household, and it may engender aggravation, difficulties, irritation. On the other hand, if you've ever seen your loved one or partner collapse because of the injury of extreme sound, you will know that you have to become kind and considerate, considering their difficulties with surrounding noises. It's going to be hard, and you're going to have to think about it all the time. It's easy to slip into normal behavior. We're not remembering that the difficulty exists. One of the things one needs to do to be around such a person is to try to be quiet, particularly to try to modulate your voice so that it's lower. It's easy to forget about this and to talk louder, thinking that if, for example, your partner wears earmuffs or earplugs, that one needs to talk louder. This is not the case always. Music particularly is a difficulty. If you're interested in listening to loud music, like we frequently are, it's impossible for such a person to tolerate that level of noise. So you have to lower your expectations of the volume of music, particularly. This also, of course, works in the car as well, because we often have very elaborate musical systems in the car, and it's easy to listen at higher levels, and it's an enclosed space. So it's important to always either turn off the radio when your partner enters, or to lower it to a level that you may think is hardly audible, but which is more than loud enough for that person. As far as household chores are concerned, these often cause difficulties, particularly vacuuming, which produces a high volume of noise. So make sure that your partner or your loved one is out of the house when you do that kind of activity. Another thing that produces difficulties is the dishwasher, running the dishwasher. Again, make sure that your partner or loved one is out of the house or in a different level of the house or in a different floor before you run the dishwasher. Unloading the dishwasher, the clattering and clanging of various dishes and cutlery is also difficult. And so make sure that that partner is elsewhere when you do that kind of activity. Wheels running on irregular surfaces, such as shopping carts or garbage cans, can also be extremely annoying. So one needs to worry about that and put some distance between yourself and the afflicted person if you engage in such behavior. Another important thing is to give your partner warnings if you're going to be doing anything that will cause a loud noise. And that includes various things, such as opening aluminum cans or doorways or whatever. The important thing is to give notice, because if the person is caught unaware, that makes their suffering even greater and the shock of the noise even greater. For example, once I bought a new toy, a new implement, and I just decided to turn it on briefly just to see if it worked. And that was a saw, and it caused an enormous difficulty. So if you're going to be engaged in any activity that produces loud noise, particularly, and this often is involved with the person is not facing you and not aware of your presence. So make sure that you inform the person ahead of time and that you're facing them so that they can see what's going on. That way they can brace for such an activity. Periodically, particularly after a high stress situation with loud noises, your partner or your loved one may need to simply be alone to recover, to find solitude and quiet by themselves. And so in such instances, it's important to vacate the room or the house and let that recovery period occur. Watching movies is important entertainment. And even though we have an awesome music system capable of producing enormous fidelity and sound, we watch movies using headphones. Each of us has different control over volume, and that allows us to watch easily, even the more dramatic movies, without causing difficulties. With regard to eating, both chewing loudly and eating with implements is another thing to consider. For example, we're using wooden or plastic eating implements instead of the beautiful wrought iron Mexican implements that we used before. This causes some difficulties because it's hard to stab food with a wooden fork and have it adhere. But on the other hand, this reduces the noise of clattering and clanging, which is particularly important. Opening mail, for example, is another instance where you have to be very careful, particularly with a knife opening an envelope, causing that tearing sound, tearing pages of interest out of a magazine, and also engaging in other activities in the same room. If the loved one is wearing headphones or ear protection, this does not mean that they're being impolite. This means that they want to be present with you in the room, even though they have to take hearing protection into account. There are several tasks that I've assumed because not that my loved one or partner is incapable of them, but simply because it makes it easier for that person to endure the experience. For example, I'm doing all of the driving now, whereas my partner is perfectly capable of driving herself. And the reason I do that is that she can protect her hearing while we're on the road. And lots of road noise will intrude, particularly with different vehicles that have different sound levels. And so that's one thing that I do. The importance here is to try to be kind and compassionate and to express your love. Even though it's a difficult situation, you agreed in sickness and health and difficulties to be with this person. So that means that they require your love and they require your understanding. If not, it's going to make the whole situation untenable. I think for parents, particularly with children, that it's easy to think that the child is misbehaving or not paying attention or being impolite. But all these things will cause great pain for them and will be very difficult for them to endure. So the key element here is to regard your job as a parent seriously and to regard their health and happiness equally seriously. Thank you for watching.